Before a single lap of the race is complete, Bubba Wallace already has one of the hardest jobs in the field, and that is what makes this Texas story so fascinating. Most drivers go into a race weekend trying to find speed, build confidence, and slowly put together a clean shot at a good finish. Wallace actually seemed to be doing that. The car looked fast, the practice pace was encouraging, and for a moment it felt like the number 23 team might finally be setting itself up for the kind of Sunday that could change the tone of their season. And then, in the kind of instant that only motorsport can produce, the entire weekend flipped upside down. That is what makes racing at a place like Texas Motor Speedway so unforgiving. It does not care how promising your pace looked 10 minutes ago. It does not care how much work your team put in all week. It does not care how badly you need a result. The track can take control away from you in one corner, one loose moment, one correction that comes a fraction too late. Wallace found that out the hard way when the car snapped loose and backed into the wall, turning what had looked like a solid setup day into a full-blown recovery mission. And now the story is no longer about how fast Bubba Wallace can be in clean air. Now it is about whether he can survive the kind of Sunday that tests everything a driver and team have. Because starting near the back at Texas is not just inconvenient. It is a full race-changing problem. This is not a track where you simply line up at the rear, make a few bold moves, and drive your way back to the front like it is a video game. Texas demands timing, patience, precision, and a little bit of luck. If any one of those things is missing, your day can get stuck in traffic before it ever gets started. That is why this weekend feels bigger than one crash. It is really about pressure. Pressure on Wallace to stay composed. Pressure on the crew to get the backup car ready and competitive. Pressure on the pit team to make every stop matter, because when you start this deep in the field, you do not have much margin for wasted time. One slow stop can erase 10 laps of progress. One bad restart can drop you right back into trouble. One wrong move in dirty air can put you in the wall again. Everything becomes harder when you are trying to come forward instead of defending a good track position. What makes this more painful for Wallace is that there was real reason to believe this could have been a strong weekend. It is one thing to struggle because the car is off. It is another thing to know the speed was there and still end up in a hole before race day even begins. Drivers can live with being off pace because at least the explanation is simple. But when the car is quick and the opportunity disappears anyway, that is the kind of frustration that sticks with you. You are not wondering whether the team brought enough speed. You are wondering what might have happened if just one moment had gone differently. And that is where the mental battle comes in. A driver in Wallace's position has to make a choice. He can let the weekend feel cursed, or he can treat the whole thing like an opportunity to prove something. Because while the crash changes the starting position, it does not automatically erase the possibility of a comeback. In fact, sometimes these are the races that end up redefining how people look at a driver. Not because he wins, and not because everything goes perfectly, but because he responds to adversity in a way that reminds people why he belongs in the conversation. The interesting part is that Wallace is not walking into completely unknown territory here. Texas has not always been a bad track for him. He has shown speed here before. He has had strong runs here before. There is history that says this is a place where he can be competitive. That matters, because if this were happening at a track where he had never looked comfortable, the mood around the weekend would feel much darker. But because he has previously shown that he can be quick at Texas, there is still this sense that if the backup car is close enough, and if the race develops in the right way, he could still surprise people. At the same time, no one should pretend this is a simple challenge. His recent form has not exactly erased doubts. When a driver comes in with mixed results and then immediately gets buried deep in the field, fans start to split into two groups. One side sees the speed from practice and thinks this could become one of those charge-through-the-pack performances that makes for a huge talking point. The other side sees the inconsistency, the traffic, the backup car, and the nature of Texas, and they expect another frustrating afternoon. Honestly, both sides have valid reasons. That uncertainty is exactly why Wallace may become one of the most watched drivers in the race, even without starting anywhere near the front. Everyone knows what it looks like when a fast car starts up front and stays there. That story is easy to follow. But a driver starting near the back with something to prove? That is where tension lives. Every restart matters more. Every pit cycle becomes more dramatic. Every pass feels like a step in a larger climb. And every time he gets close to a dangerous situation, viewers are going to wonder whether this comeback effort is about to build momentum or fall apart again. There is also a team element here that should not be overlooked. A race like this is never just on the driver. The crew now has to deliver under difficult circumstances. The backup car has to be ready. The setup has to be close. The communication has to be sharp. Strategy calls have to be aggressive when they need to be, but not desperate. This is where strong organizations separate themselves from average ones. Anybody can look polished when a weekend goes according to plan. The real test is whether you can stay dangerous after the plan gets destroyed. For Wallace, the first part of the race may tell us everything. If he can settle in, avoid overdriving the car, and pick off positions without burning up his tires or putting himself in reckless spots, then this thing can start to turn. Once a driver gains rhythm, the whole race begins to feel more manageable. But if he gets trapped in traffic, loses balance in dirty air, or starts forcing moves because the progress is coming too slowly, then Texas can punish that impatience immediately. This track is famous for turning small mistakes into big consequences. That is why the challenge on Sunday is not really about doing something spectacular right away. It is about building the race in layers. Survive the opening laps. Keep the car clean. Stay on the lead lap. Make the pit stops count. Let strategy create windows. Then, if the speed is there, let the race come to him. The temptation in a situation like this is to think the whole comeback has to happen in the first stage. Usually that is how drivers make things worse. Smart recoveries are rarely dramatic at the start. They become dramatic at the finish because of all the disciplined work that happened first. And maybe that is the best way to look at Bubba Wallace's weekend now. This is no longer a clean, straightforward run toward a nice finish. It is a test of discipline, patience, resilience, and execution. It is about what a team does after the easy version of the weekend disappears. The crash already took away the comfort. It already took away the clean script. What it did not take away is the chance to fight back. So when the green flag drops, Wallace is not just racing the field. He is racing the consequences of one bad moment. He is racing the pressure of expectations. He is racing the doubts that come with recent inconsistency. And if he handles all of that well, then this Sunday could still become one of the more impressive drives of the weekend. Not because it started with momentum, but because it started with a mess and forced him to create something out of it. That is what makes this story worth watching. It is no longer about whether Bubba Wallace had speed. We already know he did. The real question now is whether he can turn early disaster into the kind of comeback that people remember long after the final lap is over.